This is the boiler for the Mountaineer, the Alco Mountaineer. It's just come down from Glenapulse Depot, where the group that are working on the Alco, they stripped it all down and did some preliminary work on the boiler. So this boiler is late 1970s built. It was built by Danks's of Netherton, a company that have long ago gone out of business. But it was designed here at Boston Lodge back in the 1970s, and it's an all welded boiler built to BS 2790, which is the standard for welded boilers, and it complies pretty well exactly with BS 2790. What that means is that there's all the details are welded. It's got a welded foundation ring. There's no rivets on it anywhere. So nowadays, if we were building a new boiler like this, we might decide to rivet the foundation ring in. But back in the 70s, I think the railway was told you must comply with BS 2790, 1968 version. That's the appropriate standard. So that's what they did. So this piece here has been flanged outwards. It's been pushed out of this piece of plate all the way around, and then you can see the weld here that joins the boiler barrel to that bunged out bit of plate. You can see also the welds for the firebox sides to the throat plate. You can see there's a nice big weld all the way around there, and then the foundation ring is welded on down there, and you can see the welded stays here, and the welded on bosses that hold the expansion brackets where the boiler sits. These are not in fact used on this design, because the design was called SB3, which stands for Standard Boiler Number 3. So it was designed to be able to be fitted into the Linder and the Blanche. So this would suit the clacks that the Linder and Blanche have for the boiler feeds that go in there. But in fact, on the Mountaineer, the clack is up there, and that's that fitting there. Anyway, these are just blanked off in service, but you can see into the boiler there at the moment. So what else has it got? It's got a manifold pad up there, and then if we look round the back, it's got a welded in fire hole ring, some long stays, and then where the regulator fitting goes, and gauge glass positions. It's got this rather nice little bulge in the foundation ring, and that puts the blowdown valve outlet just above the foundation ring, so that when you open the blowdown valve, it can pick up any sludge that's sat on the foundation ring and help keep the boiler clearer. But obviously this was, a fairly complicated bit to make, but it's kept the boiler a little bit cleaner than it would have done, because obviously this would have to have been sat up if the foundation ring was flat. So you can see the inner firebox has got square corners. What that means is that there's a weld right in the corner joining the two plates, so the plate hasn't been curved or flanged. So it's a cheaper form of construction, but I guess back in the 1970s there weren't so many people about doing flanging of heritage boilers, whereas now we can get flanged plates relatively easily. So another thing to look at in here is the repair on the tube plate. So if you look at where the tube holes are, around the edge of the plate there, you can just see there's a weld, and that's because that area of the tube plate was replaced some years ago now, probably about 20 years ago or something like that. I can't remember exactly when, but basically the tube plate had cracked, so the solution was to cut it out and weld in a new piece of plate with the new holes in. We thought that might need to be done again, but actually the examination that we've had done on the boiler hasn't revealed any cracks. Maybe some very minor little defects that'll need to be polished out, but basically it's good to go again, that tube plate is. At Gladderfalls depot, as I say, the volunteers basically took the locomotive apart. We had it shot blasted and painted on the outside, which is why it's this nice red oxide colour. But before that we had a non-destructive testing man come in, and what he did was lots of non-destructive tests on the various welds round here, welds round the dome. These were all checked with magnetic particle inspection to see if there's any surface breaking cracks. So he found a few minor defects, but they've been there since the boiler was built, so the boiler inspector who came later wasn't worried. I say the white paint that you can see on the tube plate, that's where the non-destructive testing chap had come in and used magnetic particle testing, because you need white contrast paint. So the shot blasting was done afterwards, but as I say, all the welds were all checked. So there was no defects in the firebox tube plate nor the smokebox tube plate, so that's all good to go again. The only area where the boiler inspector's got some concern is just above the foundation ring, on the inside of the plate here and on the inner firebox, and at the back end there's some evidence of grooving. And grooving is basically where you've got a rigid foundation ring and the plate above can flex slightly due to heat and pressure, so it's moving. So at the point just above the foundation ring, where it's waggling like that very, very slightly, every time it moves it takes the water treatment coating off the water side and exposes a little bit of steel, which will then rust. Just a tiny amount, but over time, as the loco's been lit up and pressurised and then cools down, so it's always doing that very, very slightly. So gradually that area can get eaten away. So we'll need to do a bit of repair inside here. You can't see it at the moment, obviously, because there's plate. So I think we'll be cutting in here and maybe on the inner firebox, because the outers and the inners tend to move and work and get damaged in the same way. So the boiler inspector actually isn't wanting us to do a lot of work on this. It's just to find out how far the grooving goes and how deep it is in this area. So it's a relatively straightforward boiler repair. Obviously we'll have to put new tubes in, do the repairs here, blank it off and do a hydraulic test for the boiler inspector. But it's, as I say, it's not a big repair at all in terms of some of the other boilers that we've got. And as you'd expect, it's a 1970s built boiler. Only went into service in 1981, I think, so it's not done that many years in service, because it's sat out of service for quite a number of years now. So it'd be good to get it going again. Right, these are two wheel sets that have come from the Bala Lake Railway. They're from a Clayton battery electric loco. So what they need is re-gauging from their 2'6" gauge at the moment. So they need to be reduced to 2 foot. So what that means is we'll have to press the wheels off the axles, and then as this diameter here is bigger than the hole in the wheel, we'll have to machine about 3 inches down, reduced diameter, so that we can then push the wheels back on, but kind of here and here. So it's a fair bit of machining, and there's a keyway inside the wheel as well. So we'll have to extend the keyway up and possibly make a new key. So there's a fair bit of work, but it's something we can do, and obviously the press will be key in that, to pressing the wheels off and pressing the wheels back on again. This item looks like a diesel loco chassis, and indeed it is a diesel loco chassis. It actually belongs to the Talyllyn Railway, and it's 2'3" gauge to suit their railway, which is why it's sat up on trolleys here. But what it's really used for now is housing the press. So over there is the big hydraulic ram. So this round bit here gets pushed out by hydraulic pressure. So the hydraulic pressure comes from a pump that's under the wooden box. So when we're using it, you fire up the pump, connect in, put a hose in there, and then the hydraulic pressure pushes out. So then all these different bits and pieces that are sat on here are for holding different wheel sets, depending on what you're doing. So obviously you need a different setup to push wheels off, from that to pushing wheels on. So there's all sorts of bits of metal that look just like random bits of metal, but actually they're very useful in holding wheel sets and pressing them on and off. So that's what all this gubbins is here. So yes, it belongs to the Talyllyn Railway, but it's been here for about 20 years, or maybe longer, I don't know. Anyway, they're quite happy with it being here, because obviously whenever they want to use it, they can come up and use it, and we use it quite regularly and maintain it. We made a new seal for the ram not that long ago, so yeah, it's a very useful bit of kit. This is Winifred's boiler from Bala. The boiler inspector decided that we need to take out the foundation ring and replace this bottom bit of the back head, and then also we have to take the outer sides off down here, and a similar bit along the throat plate. So they're copper stays because it's a copper inner firebox that it's got. So if you look in there, you can see the remains of the stay in the hole. So that's been drilled through the outer plate, and what Connor's doing now is he's knocking out the rivets to the foundation ring. When they're all out, this can be cut along here and the plate taken off, and then the rest of the stay hopefully will be unscrewable, or it might have to be drilled out of the inner firebox. So it's got copper stays because it's got a copper inner firebox. It's quite an old boiler. I'm not sure exactly how old it is, but it's a fairly old boiler. So this is the work that the boiler inspector wanted to do, and Bala have contracted us to do the work. So you can see where the heads of the stays have been ground down. And if you look at the side's been done higher up. So the heads have been taken off, ready for either drilling out, or if we're very lucky, the stays might unscrew, having taken the heads off. Not sure. We've tried to unscrew this one by welded a nut to the plate on the outside, but it doesn't unscrew. It just twisted the stay. So we're not sure. Also, if you have a look back in there, you can see on the right hand side at the bottom, just above the foundation ring, you can see the rivets sticking out that Connor's knocking through from the outside. So they're being bashed through. So, as I say, we'll be able to take this plate off, take the sides off and the throat plate off, and then drop the foundation ring out. And there's a bit of building up to do on the foundation ring, I think. And then obviously new plates here and side plates, and then obviously new copper stays. So a fair bit of work to do, but it's all good work for us. This is Una's boiler, similar Quarry Hunslet locomotive. Belongs to the National Slate Museum at Llanberis. Anyway, it has a similar problem to Winifred's boiler, but not quite the same. So this had a steel inner firebox, which we've now cut out. So the outer plates are not too bad, and they might need some replacement, but the inner firebox completely needs replacing. I say it was steel. So this is the foundation ring that's now come out of here. You can see the remains of the inner firebox around there. So we'll have to see if the foundation ring can be reused, or we might cut a new steel foundation ring to suit. But basically, say like Winifred, the foundation ring needed to come out as part of the job, and obviously the fire hole ring has come out here, and over here are the new plates to make the new inner firebox. So these have been flanged by Israel Newtons in Cromford. So you can see this nice curved shape has been formed for the back plate of the inner firebox, and then there's the new front plate of the inner firebox. They're both the same, and then a wrapper between the two. So obviously these will be welded together. So originally the flanged plates were riveted together, but in this day and age it's much better to weld these plates together. They'll give a better job, and still have the advantage of being flanged plates, but say it's a better job, and it'll last well, another 100 years or so before it'll need replacing again, I'm sure. This is the front end of Una's boiler. As you can see, the front tube plate's missing. It's been put down there because basically that plate is wasted. So we've got a new plate cut. It's got to be drilled, but basically that will go on there. So these are the long stays that tie the back head to the front tube plate. You see the nuts have been taken off the outside to allow the tube plate to come off. And there are the nuts that have been taken off. So obviously the new plate will have holes appropriately put on, and then the nuts replaced, or yeah, they look a bit scabby, so I think we'll have new nuts on there. You see it's quite a fine thread there. So that's part of the job that the boiler inspector wanted to be done. New front tube plate. This is the crown of the old inner firebox here. The rest of the firebox had to be cut out in bits around the stays, but this bit came out complete, and this bit, hopefully the girder bars, we can use again on the new inner firebox. They'll obviously need cleaning up and making to fit, but part of the reason why the firebox was failed by the boiler inspector, because basically it's thin in this area here between the girder bars. You can see here there's the riveted joint between the, I don't know whether this is the firebox back plate or the throat plate, but you can see this here, that's one plate, that's another plate, and there's rivets all along here. So we won't have that riveted joint, we'll have a welded joint there. Now say, hopefully the girder bars will be alright to go back on. So the girder bars basically support the flat plate. So they transfer the pressure of the steam that's pushing down, that force, it's transferred to the vertical side plate, the vertical front and back plates of the firebox. So they're like a bridge stiffening the top of the tube plate so it doesn't collapse under load. The is in here because it's going to be lifted up off its bogies and have some attention to one axle box that's suffered a failure. Under the cover, the end of the axle is threaded to hold the bearing, the outer bearing in position. And there's two nuts on there, but these are the two nuts that we've found, so that the two nuts had actually loosened themselves somehow, wound themselves off, destroying the thread on the axle end in the process, and been rubbing against the cover and letting the bearing move outwards a bit. So they're a bit of a mess. So we've got a repair to do. Hopefully we can cut a new thread and come up with perhaps a better locking mechanism rather than just the two nuts. But we'll see. It might need a new axle. We're not sure at the moment. But say we've got to lift the loco up off the bogie and strip it all down and have a proper look. That's why Taliesin's in here at the moment. Right, this is the Samson. It's a visitor here from the North of England Open Air Museum at Beamish. It's on a bit of a visit, doing a few special trains, and then it's staying here this winter, and it's going to be retubed by Matt Ellis, our operations manager, as a bit of a favour for them. So Samson's a new build loco, new in 2015, but it's quite unusual, as you can see. So it's gear driven, so there's a gear here that basically drives these gear wheels, this gear wheel on this axle, and then it's rod driven to the leading axle. It's the engine is very similar to a traction engine, as you can see. So it's a single cylinder with a flywheel. And then there's a safety valve on there, with a passage through from the boiler. It's a marine boiler, marine type boiler. So it's basically a big round tube with a smaller round tube for the firebox inside it. So it's simpler to make than a conventional loco boiler, but it's they don't tend to steam as well as conventional loco boilers. But for this, it's absolutely fine. So you can see the fire's built on the fire grate here. There's a damper to let air in under the fire and through the fire. Gauge glasses. Obviously the water needs to stay above the level of the smaller tube that forms the inner firebox. 1:30. It's sat here at Boston Lodge because on a Mondays the train doesn't go from this end of the line. There's a train from the Carnarvon end to Bethgelert and back again, but this engine has a rest on Mondays. So we're lucky in that we've got basically 3 Garretts available for service at the moment: 130, 87 and 143. Although 143 is temporarily out of action at the moment because that's having a new grate fitted, and the grate has got smaller gaps, so that less of the fuel and ash drop through. So we've been having a bit of trouble with the fuel at the moment, in that the coal and the ovoids burning, a lot of it falls through the bar gaps, and we get fires in the ash pans, which is obviously not good. So anyway, so the new pattern of grate has got smaller gaps, so hopefully less of the fuel will be falling into the ash pan, so we won't be wasting that fuel. So that's a prototype that we've had cast. That's going in 143 at the moment, and 143's also having a new stainless steel ash pan. So I think this one is all mild steel, apart from some of the more vulnerable bits. But with the fuel we've got at the moment, we get quite a bit of corrosion. So anyway, so we've made 143 a new stainless steel ash pan bottoms. Let's say it's having the grate replaced at the same time, and probably they'll replace the brick arch as well. But hopefully that will only take about a week. And at the moment, let's say 130 and 87 are running the service. And then as soon as 143 is ready, that'll come back into service. Right, the Welsh pony was out of traffic for quite a while earlier this year. Well, we obviously we had to replace the driving wheel centres because they cracked. Anyway, when we put it back together, we started having trouble with the axle boxes, the driving axle boxes running warm. So we had to drop the axle out again, do various fettling to the axle boxes, and eventually we found various small problems that were causing the axle boxes to run warm. Anyway, hopefully now it's cured and it will be reliable in service.